Welcome to Taste of Truth Tuesdays, where we'll be serving up bite-sized conversations on all things fitness, nutrition, mindset, and spirituality. So grab your headphones and get ready to taste the truth with us every Tuesday. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform because every bite counts. Hey, welcome back to Taste of Truth Tuesdays, everybody. This week, we are diving into the fascinating and impactful world of body image and social media, guided by two incredible guests who bring evidence-based insights and a passion for accessibility and mental health research. First, let me introduce you to Dr. Hannah Jarman, PhD, a trailblazer in psychology whose work sheds light on how we perceive ourselves in the digital age. Alongside her is the brilliant Miss Claudia Liu, a PhD candidate whose research explores the intersection of social media and body image. These two share a very important common mission, making complex research not just understandable, but applicable in everyday life. Body image is a term we hear often, but what does it really mean? Well, at its core, body image is your perceptions, beliefs, feelings, thoughts, and actions related to your physical appearance. Think of it as your personal relationship with your body. Sounds simple, but in a world shaped by curated social media feeds, fitspiration photos, and filters on TikTok, it is anything but. Before we get into the interview, I want to ground our discussion by exploring the four components of body image, starting with perceptual body image, which is how you see yourself. And here's the catch. The way you see yourself or the way you see your body often doesn't match reality. It's a perception distorted by negative self-talk and societal pressures. And awareness about this is the first step. Interrupting that loop of negative self-talk can help shift your perception towards something healthier. Next, there's affective body image, which reflects how you feel about your body, your likes and your dislikes. And these feelings are deeply influenced by the media that we consume, from TV, movies, to social media trends like fitspiration. And here's the thing, hating your body is not a prerequisite for change. Dissatisfaction and acceptance can coexist, so making intentional choices about what media you engage with can actually profoundly impact how you feel about yourself. Final two components of body image are cognitive body image, and these are the thoughts and beliefs that you hold about your body. So have you ever heard someone say, "I'll be happy when I finally hit my goal weight"? This is a dangerous trap because happiness isn't tied to a number on the scale. Chasing an external solution for an internal problem often leads to harmful patterns like disordered eating behaviors and a cycle of discontentment. When I look back at photos of myself at my leanest, whether it was during my bodybuilding competitions or soon after, I remember how uncomfortable I felt in my body even then. This always reminds me that body image isn't exactly about how your body looks, it's about your relationship with your body and ultimately with yourself. And finally, the fourth component of body image is behavioral body image, and this is the actions we take based on our perceptions, feelings, and beliefs. When someone struggles with negative body image, they might engage in destructive behaviors like overexercising, disordered eating, or social withdrawal. So in closing, I want you guys to know that positive body image isn't believing your body looks good, it's knowing your body is good, regardless of how it looks. And so today, we're going to unpack all of these components with Dr. Jarman and Miss Liu and dive into their groundbreaking research on the impact of social media and fitspiration on our body image. We'll also share actionable tips that will help you reshape your relationship with your body and your digital environment. So get ready for an enlightening and empowering conversation. Let's go. Everybody, I am sitting here with Dr. Hannah Jarman and Claudia Liu. Thank you so much for sitting down with me. It's really exciting. You guys are the well-being doctors. There'll be all sorts of information linked in the show notes for the listeners. Would you guys please just introduce yourselves and share a little bit about your background and what got you started into researching these fields?
Yeah, sure. I can jump in. So my name is Hannah Jarman. I'm a research fellow over in Deakin University, so in Melbourne, Australia. My research looks at body image and eating disorders, so some of the predictors of and some interventions and prevention programs. And I'm also really interested in the influence that social media plays as well. How I got into this area, so I was studying psychology, and a young person in my life, she was about 5 or 6 at the time, was really struggling with her body image and her appearance. And she was making comments like, I'm fat, I need to lose weight. And concerningly, again, as well, is her parents or her family environment had a history of eating disorders. So it was a lot of red flags, and I'm really concerned. So I spoke to a lecturer who was kind of focused on body image and eating disorders, and got a little bit of support for her and tried to help her work through some of that stuff. I ended up working on some body image interventions in schools following that, got into the space, and then I moved over to Melbourne in 2018 to do my PhD, which was looking at the impact of social media on adolescents' body image and well-being.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on your podcast. For your viewers, my name is Claudia, and I'm a final year PhD candidate in psychology here in Melbourne, same university that Hannah's working in. And my research focus is largely on disordered eating, body image, and more towards digital health at the moment, because that's just the direction where research is heading to. But I felt particularly drawn to the field of eating disorders and body image, just due to my personal experience with disordered eating and negative body image when I was younger. And as with most people with similar experiences, this was very much brought about by a host of environmental and social factors that pushed and normalized thin ideals, as well as unhealthy weight loss methods. So I definitely bought into that because of the media. And growing up in Southeast Asia as well, thin bodies and thin physiques were very much glorified. And I internalized a lot of those ideals, and that led to obviously some unhealthy behaviors. So luckily I came out on the other end in one piece. And because of that experience, I felt very drawn to explore some of these important issues in more depth in my own research. So that's why I decided to do a PhD in psychology and eating disorders. So hopefully some of the research that we do can help people who are experiencing the same thing.
You mentioned, someone in your life, Hannah, as young as the age of 5, was dealing with body image issues. That's what I've been seeing in the data is 5 and 6. I've struggled with disordered eating. I've enrolled in eating disorder therapy. I've had some of the most craziest programs given to me where I had to eat the same meal 1 through 6 every day. So strict with it. And it's just, it's to the point where I'd end up binging. We mentioned that you experienced that too. And so thank you for the research, because I also, while I do not have a PhD, underwent a psychology certification that's continuing education for personal trainers in psychology, because I started seeing this concept I call periodized nutrition or reverse dieting. A lot of people come to me with a desire to lose weight, which I do, or I would coach weight loss, but I had a lot of things we had to work on before that was even a green flag. And most were under eating. Most had been yo-yo dieting. Most had not been consistent with anything. And I was like, you have to earn your right to diet here. And that was a concept we really had to stress with my clients. It's really difficult. So I was like, I better learn some psychology, because they want to pay me to lose weight and they don't really care about any of that. They just don't like that their pants don't fit well.
Yeah, I just was going to add to that. I think it's so ingrained in our society, these ideals and these pressures and dieting. If you think about the people around you, the majority probably of the females in particular, but also a lot of males, struggle with these issues and do have unhealthy relationships with food or exercise or whatever it may be, because these perfect ideals are supposedly so easy and we should all be achieving them. But that's just
absolutely. You're right. Men do have the pressure as well, like this big masculine look, or the negative term of dad bod. Like, men are also getting objectified, or these judgments on them. So much of what the fitness industry sells is a psyop. They're just trying to sell you can control this. It's like in the religious world, we have this thing called the prosperity gospel. If you do this, you'll get God's blessing. It seems like that's what the diet culture has. If you do this, you'll get this. It's like the same old tune. And so that play to this deep human core thing that a lot of us struggle with. And so I appreciate you guys getting on here. So I mentioned a little bit off mic what season 2 we were exploring. So we did, talk about breaking free from diet culture. We talked about a little bit about body neutral fitness and what that was, and looking at performance-based goals. And while that might have, bonus of you might get a little, your aesthetics might change, your body might change a little bit, but let's not focus on that. That's just a bonus. Let's just focus on getting stronger or improving your blood markers or just getting outside walking every day, simplistic stuff. And so I've learned as a personal trainer that even if clients do achieve their weight loss goals, that does not actually lead to a better body image or happiness. What is body appreciation and why is it so important for our mental well-being?
Yeah, I can take that one. So, body appreciation is basically a key or core positive body image concept that involves recognizing, valuing, and also respecting the body for its functional capacity and its health rather than how it looks. And I know you mentioned that earlier on. So it's basically shifting the focus away from aesthetics and towards its functional capacity and functionality. And over the past 10 years, there has been a surge in research studies showing greater body appreciation to be associated with a number of psychological outcomes, such as improved self-esteem, better quality of life, and also overall emotional and physical well-being. And there are also studies showing that body appreciation encourages people to adopt healthier, more flexible eating patterns like intuitive eating. And it is for these reasons that it's been proposed as a potential protective factor against issues like body dissatisfaction, symptoms of disordered eating, and also building resilience against societal pressures to fit into unrealistic beauty standards. So that's kind of my interpretation of body appreciation and why it's so important.
I guess just adding to that briefly as well, I think the focus really is understanding that our bodies are wonderful and they do so much for us. And we get so caught up in how they look and the expectation in that area that we forget how lucky we are to have perhaps a functioning body, or we have, okay, maybe you don't like your arms because you think they're flabby, but you can hug your child or do all these incredible things that we just get so caught up and forget. I think it's been able to take a step back and really think about and appreciate and value those things.
Yeah. And also I think body appreciation can go a level deeper for those who might be disabled, who might have lost maybe weren't born into it, but have lost the ability to. That's going to be really difficult but you can still find ways to appreciate just the sun on your skin. Yeah. Or, maybe you can't move and walk like you could. Maybe you can't hug your child, but there are ways to still appreciate the vessel that you dwell in so you can interact with the world that we're in. Yeah. And that's why I like body appreciation, because it really, like you said, strips away a lot of those pressures and ideal body standards. And I think for fitness, that really I don't know what happened, if it's always been poisoned the wellness culture about it being so focused on looks, because I know that was something. I'm a 90s kid. So Jessica Simpson I was told she was fat. So that slim heroine ideal was sold to me. I'm almost 40, which is crazy. That's what I was raised in, the low rise jeans. And that was
back now. Maybe just in Australia, but they're back.
No thanks. No thanks. So social media has had a major influence on body image and mental health, especially among women. So Hannah, from your research, what are some key ways you've seen social media affect eating behaviors? I guess both of you could really touch on it, because disordered behavior, eating behaviors are very, very predominant right now as well, especially as this is airing. It's in January. So we're going to be in that extreme push. So how can we be more aware of these 30-day challenges, 75 hard, all this stuff is kicking off in January with the new year? How can we be aware of how these challenges or this push might be negatively impacting our mental health, but also there is some benefit to the motivation that these can provide, right? It's not all bad, but how can we navigate the noise of January and this push on social media?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, we need to think about what is the research saying? What is the evidence in terms of what we know is good or bad? So typically what we find is social media tends to make us feel worse about our appearance or our body, and it can actually encourage more disordered eating behaviors or put some of that pressure on as well. One of the key reasons for that, or one of the key mechanisms that we know, is around comparisons. So we see perfect people living their perfect lives in their perfect bodies, and we don't look like that. So we feel bad about ourselves and we feel the need to change and think that if we could just lose that bit of weight, or if we could just get to that, then everything would be great and we'll be happy. So that's I guess a lot of the harm or issue comes from. Interestingly, in the research, we typically looked at time spent online, but more recently that seems to be less important, and it's more around the activities or the content that we're seeing. So the particularly harmful aspects of social media are around appearance-focused activities. So that could be, for example, photo editing or using filters, or again, comparisons, that kind of space, and the content that we're seeing. So we've talked a little bit about the fitspiration or thinspiration as well as another kind of space that we see. We know that these can actually be harmful. The exposure to these can be harmful. I think the idea is that it's inspiring, but what we tend to see is people actually feel a lot of pressure and then maybe feel a lot of shame, which leads them to be less likely to engage in exercise or body appreciation or looking after their body, because they feel like they should feel bad about themselves. And then that actually doesn't encourage the exercise that it's supposed to. So I think that there's those are a few examples of some of the harmful stuff, but trying to understand what can we do, like you said, to be more aware of some of these impacts or to reduce the harm. I think it's about reflecting on how we're using it. So what are we following? What are the things that we're seeing and how is it making me feel? Curating a feed. So even though the algorithm, of course, has a lot of control, you do also have some control. So thinking about if you're seeing content that makes you feel a bit rubbish, or if you're comparing yourself to, unfollow, hide it, block it, follow the things that make you laugh, or the hobbies or other things going on in your life. And another final one as well, I think, is around social media literacy. So this is basically evaluating, what am I seeing in this post? Who is posting it? Why are they posting? What do they want me to do? How realistic is this? Are they trying to sell something financially or just an idea of something? So I think those kind of critical skills are really, really helpful. I've actually developed an intervention which is running at the moment. So it's an online intervention called Reshape. And there are 3 different modules, and we go through all of these kind of tips, and there's various activities for people to try. It is currently only available to people who are over 18 and living in Australia. So maybe not all of your readers, but we're hoping to extend to the US if it does seem promising. So that's called Reshape.
Cool. I'll link that. I'll try to get that information. I'll link it in the show notes. And I do have listeners in Australia, so we'll make sure that's available for them for sure. And then keep us in the loop if it spreads, because that is really helpful. Like starting to notice like mindfulness, just like, how do I feel when I'm reading this post? I personally I'm not monetized. Nothing I push I don't have any links. I don't sell anything at all. I even give my strength training guide away if people ask for it, because I'm in this place where I just want to share information, and I want to be seen as an expert, but I also want to be seen as someone that is just like here, normal, imperfect human, right? This like this weird balance, and trying to encourage people that they can be open with their journey. And so in summary, since we're almost at the half an hour, you shared some things about some of the how to counter the negative impacts. And one of the research I know in the fitspiration stuff, they were looking at like working out. Well, first off, I want to touch on a lot of us fitness creators might be putting out that content thinking it's inspirational.
Mm-hmm.
Yet the comparison is that like my body doesn't look like that when I'm jumping up and down. My body doesn't look like that when I'm running on the treadmill. Now my stomach feels funny. I don't look like that when I sit down, because typically they're wearing very little clothing. So there's this, I don't look like that when I move. And so that's why I get discouraged when I start to move, because I jiggle. I have to adjust my clothes. My thighs rub together. It's just really difficult. And even though we might know that some of those images, I'd say most of them are edited, the lighting, the posing. I mean, I know that in bodybuilding, we were literally contorting our bodies and having to go to the chiropractor 12 days a week because we were twisting our spines and so much to make our bodies look like that. So it's difficult to remind ourselves there's so much fake behind the photos. And so
I would just quickly jump in as well. And I think the point you make, it is really challenging, because what you can be putting out content and hoping or thinking it's helpful, and the name fitspiration makes you think it's inspiring. But I guess just practically, if you are creating that content, something to think about is, what are you putting out? So for example, if it's a before and after image, sometimes that can be challenging for people who think that they need to get to that. The before picture, that person isn't worthy.
Right.
But the after picture, suddenly they're amazing and everything's great in their life. So I think it's really about shifting the focus to how that person's feeling. And maybe it's around their performance or things as well that they may want to be thinking about or focusing on, rather than just that number on the scale, for example.
Yeah, being like, here's my client, running this cycling event prior, and here she is second. Here's her data. Look how much faster she got. You could be like, what clothing are you wearing when you're filming yourself? The other thing, you must post before and afters. Please put a cover photo on there first. That way, I think it would still protect people a little bit from instantly scrolling and seeing it. If they at least, it's almost like a trigger warning, but you don't have to. I really wish they would do that. I'm very much against before and after photos, but I understand it's a very strong marketing technique. So I just wish they'd put a cover photo on it, so then we'd have to at least swipe to get
show the progression as well, because it's not always a linear, straightforward, easy from to be. There's ups and there's a lot of downs as well. So demonstrate that authenticity and be realistic, so people know what to expect. You're not going to get from A to B and everything's perfect and easy and that your whole life has turned around. A lot of people, even if they get to this, for example, a goal weight or something, they still have those body image concerns, and it just changes to something else. So it's really about that journey, not focusing on the number, and thinking about how you're feeling in yourself and what you can be doing to support your well-being and body appreciation, all those other kind of aspects too.
Because it really isn't a destination. We're really never going to get there. And that's been the biggest wake up for me, is that I remember when I was competing, I was as lean as possible, 40 pounds lighter, and I still saw a negative body image. And that's how I know, if I look back when I was the leanest I've ever been, and I remember I felt fat then it's not really about my body. It's about me in my head. And that was the biggest wake up. Now that I'm getting older, I know that when I'm 60, I'll look at these photos now and be like, oh goodness, I'm great. And so I'm starting to pick up on that. And that's some wisdom that I hope that our listeners can hear from. And we'll have more tips in the show notes, like if they want to do a little bit more research. And this is the other thing that I wanted to say before we go, was that in the research I saw in regards to curating your feed, you mentioned that nature, there was specific research. It was like nature and more just like geographic photos and animals. That really helped people actually walk away from social media feeling better. So I just wanted to specifically mention, like, what would you fill your feed with? Of course, hobbies and stuff you like, but specific beautiful things that remind you that humans are good, the world is good, because sometimes media can be curated to be that doom and gloom as well. Is there anything you guys want to add as we're like closing up the interview? I just really appreciate your time and insights.
Yeah, sure. I guess I'm just speaking from personal experience, because back then when I did engage in disordered eating and had a very difficult relationship with how I looked, I was following a lot of fitness influencers online who had a certain body type, and that was very much idealized. And in terms of curating my social media feed, I simply just unfollowed those influencers that made me feel inadequate and started following those who promoted the importance of strength training. So for example, I would follow a lot of influencers that promoted science-based training and trying to achieve, performance rather than aesthetics. And that really changed my entire perspective on my relationship with food, my relationship with training at the gym. And then through that, I was able to shift my focus towards more just being appreciative of my body, because it's amazing that I get to go to the gym and lift weights and feel really great after that, rather than lifting weights and running an hour on the treadmill just to burn off calories. So basically, just to summarize, it's just unfollowing the unhelpful content and those content that perpetuates really unhealthy ideals, and shifting the focus towards more performance-based and strength-based training and perpetuating more healthy ideals. But that's basically it in terms of strategies on my end.
Yeah, and just before we finish as well, I do think it's important. You mentioned at the start, but Claudia and I have set up a social media account. So on Instagram and TikTok, so we're called the Wellbeing Doctors. So the.wellbeing.doctors. And the account's really to make research accessible. So research can be hard to find. It can be really boring. So what we want to do is get research out to the public in an accessible, interesting, and a practical way. So what we post about is a range of different mental health and wellbeing topics. And there's a real focus on practical things or tips that can help you or the people around you. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, then please do give us a follow. If there's any particular topics that you may be interested in as well, feel free to shoot us a message through and we could create some videos or some content for in that area as well. So yeah, please give us a follow if you are on Instagram or TikTok.
Yeah, I will link that in the show notes as well. Thank you guys so much for listening. And that's all I have for you today, folks. And as we close, let's anchor in this transformative message. Your body is an instrument, not an ornament. And that's a quote from the book, More Than a Body. And I think it beautifully captures the essence of what we've explored today. As we discussed, the fitness industry often sets standards based on bodybuilding gurus and extreme aesthetics. And these standards are appraised by critical judges or an audience that values visual perfection. But let's be honest. What goes on behind the scenes in this reality of preparing for these aesthetic ideals often includes very extreme measures, severe dehydration, malnutrition, laxative and stimulant abuse, and emergency level exhaustion. No legitimate doctor or health coach would ever recommend these tactics for health. They're the opposite of health promoting, actually. Instead, let's focus on experience and benefit, not being ornaments to be admired. Metabolic health, strength, and stamina are far more meaningful indicators of well-being than achieving a perfect, and that's in quotation marks, appearance. When we prioritize function over aesthetics, we open the door to a new, more effective, and empowering way to experience health and fitness. At first, the idea of letting go of weight goals or aesthetic ideals might feel like giving up on your body or your health, but the reality is letting go of these pressures frees you to reconnect with your body in a way that truly serves you. Your body is how you live, love, and experience the world. It is the way you savor delicious food and dance to your favorite songs, and how you feel the rain on your skin, and how you embrace and hug the people that you love. By focusing on what your body can do, rather than how it looks, you can deepen your relationship with it and rediscover what health and fitness really mean to you. So let's commit to shifting our focus together, set goals rooted in function, experience, and well-being, not in unrealistic aesthetic-based ideals, because when you change the way you think about your body, you find the freedom to live more fully in it. And as always, stay curious, embrace skepticism, and keep tuning in. Have a great week.